Well, hello everyone and welcome to my April book roundup. I'm going to give you short reviews and ratings of the 11 books that I read this month. If you like this video, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Additionally, you can hit the bell icon and you can get a notification next time that I upload a video. I shoot 3 videos per month, including these book roundups. Also, if you want to follow me on Twitter or interact with me on Goodreads, Twitter you'll get really short reviews, and Goodreads you'll get much lengthier reviews of all the things that I read this year. So I'm a big fiction reader, but I read a lot of nonfiction this month, so I'm going to separate those in the video. You can find timestamps below in the description if you just want to skip ahead past the nonfiction, or even if you want to skip the fiction. Just make sure that you come back at the very end so you can see what my book of the month is going to be, as well as a sneak preview of some of the things that I'm looking forward to reading next month. So I'm going to start with the nonfiction. The first nonfiction book is something that I actually read on my Kindle, so I guess I can stand this up right here. It's Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Won't Shut Up. No, that's not really the title. The title is Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Won't Stop Talking. Even though I'm making these videos, I am an introvert, and reading about a lot of different things about the introverted mind and how introverts tend to interact with society. I actually learned a lot about myself, but I think this is a very good book for extroverts as well. In fact, there's a lot of things that extroverts can learn from this, and I think a lot of the science is not too heavy in this, although there is a lot of brain research, but there's just a lot of practical stories about introverts and extroverts and how they can benefit society together, and I found it very illuminating, and it was a very, very well told book, and it went down very quick. I gave Quiet by Susan Cain 4.5 out of 5. All right, the next nonfiction book I'm going to review is Tuesdays with Morrie by Mitch Albom. I'd heard of this book, and it's apparently 20th anniversary edition, so it's been out quite a long time. I've been reading a lot of grimdark fantasy, so I wanted to do something wholesome in the middle. This book wasn't what I expected, but it was quite beautiful. I thought it was just going to be a relationship between a mentor and a mentee, but it was really about the mentor in his final days, just imparting wisdom to Mitch Albom. Very, very beautiful book that I highly recommend to anybody. I think you could probably put it down in 2 hours like I did. It's a beautiful, beautiful book that deserves all the accolades that it has received. Tuesdays with Morrie, 5 out of 5. All right, the next nonfiction read on my list is by Stephen King. And this is On Writing, a memoir of the craft. I always enjoy hearing artists talk about their craft. As a musician, I've read countless texts about musicians and conductors and composers talking about what it is that they do. I've always liked the show Inside the Actor's Studio, where actors talk at length about what it is that they do in their craft. So when I saw that my favorite author wrote a book about writing, I knew that I just had to read it. I think the genius in this book is its brevity. I think most English professors in America could probably put together a 500-page textbook on how to write, but Stephen King puts it together in about 200 pages. It's equal parts memoir of his early attempts at writing, and then there's a good portion of the book that talks about, the basics, about, what he believes as a writer. And there's even a section at the end where he shows you revisions that he's done to make his work stronger. This was a home run of a book that I really, really enjoyed. I give On Writing 5 out of 5. All right, the fourth and final nonfiction book I'm going to talk about is a book by Maria Konnikova called The Biggest Bluff. And this was a book about... Konnikova is a journalist who has a PhD in psychology, and she was a writer for The New Yorker. And she quit her job to play poker and write a book about it. But what's initially interesting about it is the fact that she didn't know anything about poker. Didn't even know the basics. I mean, didn't even know to take the jokers out of the pack of cards. So seeing her go from a novice to a poker champion was very interesting. But the subtitle for me is what made this book great. The subtitle is How I Learned to Pay Attention, Master Myself, and Win. And that's where I think the greatness of this book is really revealed, where she really learned to analyze what she was doing, the decisions she was making, the emotions that were causing her to make good or bad decisions, and then also thinking about her competitors at the poker table, what were their motivations? So this isn't one of those poker books that are about math where, oh, I have this hand and I'm sitting, at the cutoff 78% of the time I should check raise. It's not about that. It's really about the psychology behind it. And that's where the book has further applications beyond the poker table. This book was one of the most compelling non-fiction narratives I've ever encountered. I put it down in 2 days. I couldn't get enough of this book. I loved The Biggest Bluff, and it's another home run of a book that I've read this month. Solid 5 out of 5. All right, on to fiction. I read 7 works of fiction this month. So one of them was on the Kindle, but I'm going to review that one and this big boy at the bottom together because they are intertwined. So the Kindle read was Dawnshard by Brandon Sanderson, which is a novella set in the world of Stormlight Archive, of which Rhythm of War is the 4th book that he's written in that series. So this is epic fantasy. This is a very big 1,200-page book. Dawnshard was a novella about 200 pages. I like the novellas like Dawnshard because it allows some of the secondary characters to come to the fore. And they don't get as much page time, if they're not a main character in the bulks of the series. So it was fun to see Ryson and especially Lopin. Lopin's amazing character, at the forefront of the story. And I liked Dawnshard. I gave it a 3 out of 5. Rhythm of War is my last Sanderson for a while. It's been a really great journey with this author. I first read Brandon Sanderson last September, and in those 8 months since I discovered Sanderson, about 7 months because it was at the end of the month that I first read him, I've read 16 books by Sanderson, but I am totally caught up with his Cosmere, which is, his interconnected worlds of his all of his fantasy stories. And it's been a great ride, but I'm caught up, so I'm going to have to wait until Wax and Wayne 4 comes out next year. But Rhythm of War was very good. I think it was the weakest of the 4 Stormlight books. I felt the plotting wasn't as good as the previous 3 installments, and there was one subplot in here that I found easily the most dull thing that Sanderson's ever written. That said, this is still a Sanderson book, which means he's better than most. So a bad Stormlight Archive book is a 4 out of 5. All right, so as I dropped that big book, I was out of fantasy series to read, so I had to start a new one. So this is my next series that I'm starting. This is the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. So if you've been watching this channel, you probably wouldn't know that I kind of stopped reading the fantasy genre for about 10 or 15 years. For the most part, all that I've read new in the last 15 years is A Song of Ice and Fire. So getting back into this genre, which was really rekindled by me reading The Wheel of Time last year by Robert Jordan, I missed a lot of great writers along the way, and Joe Abercrombie is one of them. The First Law trilogy is subgenre of fantasy known as grimdark, because these are very grittier tales. You could consider like Sanderson's books kind of like a PG-13, and this is very R-rated material. I really have enjoyed getting into this series. These are the first 2 books, and I have them backwards on the screen, so I'm going to fix that. The Blade itself is book 1, and Before They Are Hanged is book 2. The Blade itself, I gave a 4 out of 5. Really fantastic character work, and that's what you hear about when you hear about Joe Abercrombie, is the grimdark elements and the character work, how he creates these morally gray characters that are so real. And that's what I really enjoy most about book 1. The story didn't go very far, and that's okay because it's the first book in a trilogy, but it worked really well on the characters, and I gave it a solid 4 out of 5. Before They Were Hanged, I think it was a little bit better. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. As the series ramps up, I was a little let down by the conclusion of one of the plot lines, but getting to know the characters even more, and also seeing one thing that Abercrombie does very well in this genre is kind of throws tropes on its head, and I enjoy that aspect of it. But I'm really enjoying this author. I'm reading the 3rd book right now, and I ordered 2 more. I have 2 more on the way, so I'm really enjoying the First Law trilogy. So Blade itself, 4 out of 5. Before They Are Hanged, 4.5 out of 5. All right, next up I have some Bernard Cornwell. This is Stonehenge 2000 BC. This is a novel by Cornwell. Cornwell writes historical fiction. This was good, but it lacked the typical fast-paced narrative that I normally expect out of a book by Cornwell, because he writes these very great adventure tales. But I still love the protagonist. I still enjoyed the story, and although it's historical fiction, a lot of it's conjecture. And I always enjoy the historical notes that Cornwell leaves at the end. And he tells you the things that are fabricated and the things that are educated guesses and so forth. But I did enjoy Stonehenge, but not Cornwell's best. I gave Stonehenge a 3 out of 5. All right, one more by Cornwell, and this is Heretic. This is the 3rd book in his Grail Quest series. So Stonehenge was a standalone. This is part of a short series, and this follows Thomas Hookton, who's an archer in the 14th century. And it's his quest to find the Holy Grail, as well as to get vengeance upon the man who killed his father. And this was a very good conclusion to this series. I felt that the plot lines, wrapped up very well in different directions than I had expected, and the ultimate conclusion of the book, and whether the Holy Grail was found or not, was very, very satisfying to me. So Heretic was a solid 4 out of 5. All right, one more book this month, and this is The Night Fire by Michael Connelly. So I think every Connelly book I can start a review like this. Maybe I'll cut and paste this for future books, because every Connelly book, this works. Michael Connelly does it again. The guy who somehow lacks the ability to write a bad book has written another great one. Why? He is the master of plotting. This is my 30-something, I don't know how many, 33rd, I think, Connelly book, and he has not written a bad book. He is Mr. 4 out of 5 every single time. Sometimes a 5, sometimes a 3, but never below that. What I liked most about this one specifically is the fact that we had 2 protagonists. We had Harry Bosch, who is the retired LAPD detective, and we had Renee Ballard, who is the new kind of detective on the scene in these Michael Connelly stories. This is the 3rd book we've had with Ballard. Each book, I like her more and more. And they were teaming up on a case together, but with 2 protagonists, that also meant that there were some really interesting subplots. And Connelly, he just makes it work. He's so great an author. If you like crime thrillers and you have never read Michael Connelly, I don't know why you haven't, and you need to, because he's better than 98% of them out there. And he's so consistent. You can pick up any of them, and you're probably going to really enjoy it. So, The Night Fire by Michael Connelly, 4 out of 5. All right, so that was my April. Book of the month, really tough one between 3 fantastic works of nonfiction. I'm going to give it to The Biggest Bluff. I really enjoyed that book. I'm going to put a picture here of my physical TBR, although I may make a video about that, but some things that I'm looking forward to reading next month. But I am reading the 3rd book of the First Law trilogy right now, and I have some Tana French from the library on my Kindle right now as well, so that's kind of the first 2 things. But I'm looking forward to reading some great things next month. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Follow me on Twitter and Goodreads. As always, thanks for watching, and until next time, goodbye.